If you're looking to level up your business in 2026 and beyond, please consider Contractor Coalition. Amazing people, incredible builders from all around the country. We are coming up on May 1st through the 4th in Denver, Colorado. On Friday, which is the opening kickoff of that event, we are going to do a tour of Construction Instructions Warehouse and their whole facility where they test products from all over the world in Colorado and Denver. We're also going to do a tour of Alderview Construction's beautiful homes while we're there. And then that evening, we will kick off the event for Denver. That is May 1st through the 4th. Then our second event of the year will be a one-day crash course. Will be September 15th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is really meant to be a much abbreviated version, but obviously at a much lower cost. And then our last 3-4-day event of the year will be in Charlotte, North Carolina on November 6th. For all the details, please head to contractorcoalitionsummit.com.
All of these things, I mean, that's why you have this podcast. Like, these are not easy things. Right. I think being an entrepreneur, the hardest parts are not what you expect. Again, just like being a parent or just like getting married, everyone tells you how hard it is. You cannot understand it until you're doing it. And at the same time, the benefits and the reward is so worth it.
Today on the Curious Builder podcast, we had Renee Bush in from Tandem out in Salt Lake City, and we had an amazing conversation. She's a founder and a principal strategist, and we haven't had many people that have a business operation like Renee, and it was really fascinating. She helps specifically designers. You've heard that there's riches in the niches, and I think she's like a magnet. She draws these designers to her to scale up and to level up. And so if you're interested in how a strategist thinks, you're going to love this episode. Without further ado, here's Renee Bush. Welcome to the Curious Builder podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today we're going out to Salt Lake City, Utah. We've got Renee Bush, founder and principal strategist of Tandem. Welcome to the show, Renee.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Love talking about this kind of stuff. So excited to dig in.
I love, it's funny. I've become like a total fanboy of branding. And I feel like strategist is like the colorful version. Strategist is like the black and white version of what I think we term branding and storytelling. Yes. So like you are like how we actually do it. But I just love, I don't know, maybe I've always loved it because it's really an extension of marketing. But
yes, I
have really just taken off for both my businesses when I zeroed in on brand. So a big part of what I want to talk about today is we haven't had really somebody like you on the podcast before. You're essentially a design strategist and consultant for designers only, which I think is really unique and cool.
Yeah.
So why don't we start there? I think our mutual friend, Melissa Olent, who's helping me with our Misahus project, I had told her I was doing the Smile Tour. So we're coming down. I think this is one of the last interviews on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. Actually, as luck would have it, I've been in Utah for the last 5 episodes. But Stephanie Daly from, Stephanie? Yeah. So she's coming on like an hour after you because I'm doubling up because I'm gone next week for spring break with the kids. So anyway,
cool.
Well, I'm loving my time in Utah.
Yeah. Melissa's amazing. Super excited that she connected us. She's such a talented designer. But yeah, I would say that like when it comes to strategy, I think a lot about that as like the pre-work to the branding. And I think that like it's so related to how interior design works. I think that like all of the pre-planning, the pre-construction, the architectural drawings, all of that kind of stuff, that is kind of what the strategy is for your business. And the branding is like the final result, like all the like finished selections and everything. But we can't make those choices. And we don't know, if you're designing a house, you don't know what choices to make unless you know who's going to live there, how it's going to be used, all that kind of stuff. And we have to figure that out first. So that's where strategy comes in. We start with that, and then we're able to pick all the other things. And it's funny you mentioned that your business really took off when you started to invest in branding, because I think you followed me on Instagram and I immediately noticed your logo and I clicked on it and went and sent a message like, recognized you. And I feel like those are the things where it's like you really stand out because it felt, oh, wow, this looks like a really polished person, knows what they're doing. I want to go check out more. So really fun.
Thank you. Was it out of curiosity, because we have 3 businesses, was it Mark Williams Custom Homes, Curious Builder, or Misahus?
It was the custom builder.
Okay. It's funny. I think building is sort of dominated stereotypically by men in terms of like the role. I mean, there's obviously lots of women that do it and husband and wife teams, of course, but stereotypically, and designers are completely dominated by women as a stereotype. And then architects are kind of a mixed bag. It's becoming, I heard like now it's like 60-40 women in architecture school. So the only reason I bring it up is I feel like in general, men are not as stylish as women. And so every time that I've done a design refresh or a design brand, it was my wife who told me to do so. And before I was married, it was my mom who was an interior designer.
Yeah.
And, I guess kudos to the women in my life. I guess I'm a better listener than they give me credit for because, totally. I think of it a little bit like clothes. Like you look in your closet and you're like, I've actually had my favorite sweater for 10 years, or this is probably a very guy stereotype, but it's like, you know what? I could probably use a refresh, but sometimes you need someone to say, hey, you're not, and this is going back to brand. My wife basically told me, I think we did a brand refresh 2020, so 6 years. Wow. Who knows? We'll need another one. Crazy. And basically she said the homes that you're building no longer reflect, the brand that you represent are no longer representative of the homes that you build, because we had always done high quality, but our clients had taken us to a new strata, but our brand sort of felt like it was left behind. And so I think a lot of us sort of forget how often we have to sort of refresh.
Absolutely. And I think that our branding and all these different choices that we're making every day, they create a perception, whether we want to or not. When you go and you hear there's someone's name, a designer, or someone emails you out of the blue, like how many times do designers get told, you need to network with builders and reach out to builders? And like, I'm sure you get emails, but it's like, every now and then one of them is written personally and feels like they know someone, and you click on their website and it looks super legit. And you're like, oh, I've never heard of them, but this person seems cool. This looks like someone I'd want to work with, versus the very kind of sterile spam email. And then you go and the website looks kind of crazy and you're like, I'm not even going to really respond. And the talent could be the same. Like, we don't know, it's just the perception that you create.
I 100%. I think designers are light years ahead of builders for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the circles you run in. Yeah. I mean, you look at, we'll use our friend Melissa Oland, right?
Yeah.
You go to her website, like she also, kind of that saying of niches in the riches. Like she benefits from being very traditional. Like she has a very clear idea of who she is and what she likes and what her design aesthetic is. But I also think of like Julia Miller from Yond, who I've worked with, and like they won't take jobs, or at least they won't publish the jobs if they do take it, that aren't in line with their brand. And it's so smart because it's like a magnet. It just attracts more people to that brand. And
absolutely.
And I think builders, in some ways, it's hard for us to be so specific because, and I can only speak for myself, like I have a very diverse personality. Like I'm happy to do contemporary or modern or traditional. And so like my website will show a plethora of different styles, but I think the brand is somehow how it ties it together. And
absolutely. And the more you can create that consistency, because consistency is what builds trust. And so I think that if I'm working with someone that doesn't have a very defined aesthetic, for example, then I want to find something else that can be consistent. So then I'm going to look for like, is it your quality standards? Is it your process? Is it the way you approach every project? And then maybe to support that, I'm like, let's consistently shoot with the same photographer. Let's use the same stylist. Let's make sure that even if the homes are really different, we use everything else that we have control over to create that through line and that consistency. And then even telling the story a little bit of like, if a client is looking at your portfolio and if you have a signature aesthetic, they're going to look at your portfolio and love everything. And that builds trust. They're going to be like, oh, I love everything you do. I'm assuming I'm going to love what you do for me. If the design is kind of very different and all over the place, then they might be like, well, I loved this project and I hated that project. So how do I know that you're going to make something that I love? So then maybe that's where we put like on the website, each one has a testimonial from the client saying, this is exactly what I wanted. If every single person says, hey, you made me exactly what I wanted, then we create that consistency that they're going to get exactly what they want.
On your website, and huge kudos to you, because I just think it's funny how the simple things, I mean, it seems like the wisdom, you're like, wow, she's amazing. and you likely are, but a lot of times it's the simple stuff, right? It's like, it's an old saying, right? Begin with the end in mind. And yet sometimes we need clarity, especially when we're wrapped up. Sometimes, a lot of times business owners, I imagine designers like builders and architects, a lot of our self-identity, self-worth, personality is tied up into our business. And so we have a hard time separating the two. And sometimes they're not meant to be separated, but you get where I'm going with this. And I love what you said, and I have to read it here. It just says that your company's core principle is designers deserve a business that is as intentional as the space they create. And that really resonated with me because of like the examples I just used of Julia and Melissa. Like, it's very clear that is their intention, and their intention is what, I can tell you as a business partner, not as a end user who's hiring them, but as a builder that's hiring them, which is I assume this comes up in your quadrant of like, who are they working for? Is I'm attracted to people that are organized because they make my life easier. They make the client process better. Talent is important, but honestly, if I had to choose between communication or talent, I would pick communication all day long.
And so would many clients. Many clients would say, I would rather go with a slightly less creative designer where I feel confident I'm going to get a more consistent outcome, right? Like, I would rather invest in the sure bet. And so our job as a business owner is to understand, how can we show up as a sure bet? And then to get even more sophisticated, how can we show up as a sure bet for exactly our ideal client, doing exactly what we already do best, right? So we need to understand those things.
So let's go back to the beginning. How long have you had Tandem?
I've been doing this almost 6 years.
So quite a while.
Yeah.
Right before COVID. That was fun.
Yeah.
So you worked with Studio McGee for director of ops beforehand. How long were you there for?
I was there for a couple years. So I was there when, Shay was really transitioning from really in the weeds to like the executive creative director role where she really is now. We were doing tons of projects, really starting to focus on primarily full home. It was right before and during they had the show, and they were working on the book, and there was the Target collaboration, like all that stuff was kind of in the works. And so when I came in, it was really about helping take some of the, like really pull Shay out of all of the weeds and allow her the time to kind of go after these other endeavors, which helped them to scale. So I did that for a few years. And then honestly, it kind of got to a point where the team was really functioning really, really well. And I think it was in that role that I learned that I'm more of a builder than a maintenance man, right? Like I feel like both are really important, but I like to solve the new problems. And so it was like, once we started getting to a really good rhythm and flow, I was kind of like, I think I just want to go and like solve it for new people.
I just thought of? My wife is a physician. You're the ER doc. You're like, you want to solve.
Give me the trauma.
Yeah. Like you're in the ER. Like once they go and get stabilized, you're like, yeah, they need care, but like I need the energy, stat. I need branding stat. We're hemorrhaging dollars to the, this marketing fund.
I love the new challenge. And I typically, even when I work really in depth with people, I rarely work with them longer than 6 months, because I feel like 6 months is really the maximum amount of time I want to like dig deep. And then we need to like let it simmer. We need to like let it implement and see what happens. And a lot of my clients I've worked with over years, but it oftentimes is just like, quarterly or every 6 months or once a year. And I really don't think with strategy, I think like you called this out, that we want people's businesses to be as intentional as the spaces they create. Most of the time, people do not take any time to even think about it. They just react and go. And we don't need to take a ton of time. It's just some time and making a plan.
I mean, that's so funny you say that, because I literally today so my mind just races like a lot of people. Yeah. And I just realized that I think it came up in Dan Martell's book, The Buy Back Your Time, which is kind of our book in Q1 here, is we're addicted. Entrepreneurs in general are addicted to the ER. They're addicted to the fast pace and like what's next. We need to solve a problem, and that's our superpower. It's not that I think it shouldn't be ignored, because it's amazing. But we also don't need to create. It's okay for rest. It's okay for downtime. And I know I'm super guilty of this, which is why I'm bringing it up. Is I for a long time have had a job, not a business. And it was explained to me, I've been building now for 22 years, that, are you working on the business, or is the business working on you? Or are you working on the business? And I have found so much value. So today I went out about an hour before this podcast, and I went out the next 6 months, and I blocked out like half day Fridays to just like recharge. Kudos to Caleb McDonald he's a builder up in Toronto. He told me this a couple years ago on the podcast, and I'll share it again because it's so meaningful. Once a month, he says he's out of office. He takes a train into Toronto proper. He dresses a little bit differently, and he just works at his favorite coffee shop to strategize. I just thought that was so brilliant to get, because we get used to going to the office, and sometimes we just need to just switch it up a little bit.
You have to carve it out. And I think that's something people forget, that you literally just do it and then everything adjusts around you. And I think that people always wait for like the time to appear. They wait for the magic to kind of happen instead of it being like, you have to kind of make it. You have to you carve out the time and then everyone else adjusts around you. If you sit there and just like wait for everything to slow down for you to take the time, it never will.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, I love athletics. And sometimes paying for a coach, it's an accountability. Like, you're paying for it. So then you show up. Do you find that your clients, that they,
absolutely,
when they realize that they have a problem, so they come to you and they hire you, they also realize, well, now I'm paying Renee now to like create this intentionality. And honestly, even if nothing else happened, that alone, I think would be worth it.
I absolutely think alone that's worth it. And I mean, I see the changes that clients make, and I've hired business coaches myself. I think any entrepreneur should. But I think that like, not only is it the carved out time and the accountability, I think also it's holding up the mirror. I think somebody outside of you can always see you better than you can see you. And I think that you have to pay for that perspective, because how can you actually understand reality? We always understand our point of view, but we can't see our own faces. So we need that perspective, I think, to be self-aware and to understand what we're really doing. And then I think it's also just like the insights. Like, sometimes when I'm coaching with someone or even just doing a podcast, like, you can get 1 to 2 like golden nuggets out of each thing that you do that can radically change your life, your business, the amount of money you make, your complete lifestyle. And it's always, to me, I find it's the smallest things that make the biggest impact. I am rarely going into someone's business and being like, let's overhaul everything and change you as a person, right? I'm going to go in and be like, okay, this is how we're typically working, and this is where I'm seeing a misalignment. You're saying this, but you're doing this. What's easier to fix? Is it easier to change what we're doing or easier to change what we're saying? That's different for different people. But I just think that people sometimes want this like crazy change. They want to spend a bunch of money and get like this huge, massive thing. And I'm like, sometimes you got to invest the money, and it's the smallest change, and it actually still makes the biggest impact.
Amen. I was going to ask you, you've done this now for 6 years. What are some, I guess, two-part question. One is the designers that seek you out. Is there some commonality? What attracts them to you specifically? And I don't know much about your field. Is your field for design only? Like, I work with a brand strategist here locally, but she works with all kinds of companies. Yeah. Yours is very specific.
Very specific.
Is there a lot of very specific design strategist, brand consultant coaches? Like, you kind of like check a lot. You're like the wizard of
yeah. Honestly, that is kind of where I do specialize. I think the industry is my like very specific niche. I think that I really work primarily with businesses that are looking to grow into that like $3 to $5 million space. So even if you're not there yet, it's like, if that's kind of the target, that's really where I specialize. And I say that because there are so many different designers. And I think that like, I want to grow, I want to scale. I don't want this to just be a hobby, I think is really important. So that is really where I specialize. But then when it comes to the business, I feel like I am a bit a jack of all trades, but I feel like designers in that niche are too. They are also trying to understand PR, trying to understand branding, trying to understand processes and how to be a leader. And, they're not going to grow big enough where they can have a huge leadership team that manages every single thing. They need to be the one that understands all of this. And as a consultant, I love that I'm able to offer a very holistic view of the business rather than them going and working with all these different people, telling them different things. I feel like what I can offer is looking at all the different facets of the business and then helping give recommendations holistically. The reason that my business really started the way it did is because I was doing a lot of operations work, but then in order to help people with their process, I would be like, well, what are your goals? What's your strategy? Who's your ideal client? I need to know these things to figure out your operations and your processes. And then it was like, oh, well, if that's your ideal client, your branding is not going to attract that person. And then, oh, well, your goals are to elevate your business. Well, or you want to make more money, we need to raise the pricing. If we want to raise the pricing, we need to increase the brand perception, and the value, all those things are so tied together. And I think that people often put them in a silo when they're extremely connected.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors. I've used Pella for 21 years as the exclusive window company on every one of my builds. When people ask me who I trust for windows and doors, it's Pella, every time. Their craftsmanship, their innovation, the top-tier service make them a no-brainer for any custom home builder or designer who demand the best. Whether you're designing something bold or building something with timeless elegance, Pella has you covered. They're also the only window company that has a lifetime warranty on all of their windows. I've gotten to know all of their people at Pella Corporate, as well as locally here at Pella Northland. I'm proud to call them our partners and our friends. Visit Pella.com to learn more and connect with your local reps today. For more information, you can also listen to episode 1, where I interview the Pella Northland founders, as well as episode 109, where we talk all about their latest innovation with the Steady Set window. I like the word lifestyle. And I started, I don't know how many years exactly, let's just say a decade ago. Rather than asking a client, how many bedrooms do you want? How many square feet do you want? And all that stuff.
They don't know.
They don't know. And what it might mean to us as a creator and as we build so many homes. So we get that means something tangible. That's the, that's the what, it's not the why. Mm-hmm. And so Jude Charles was, he's a documentary filmmaker. He's a beautiful person. And so he has this term called road mapping. Mm-hmm. I call it lifestyle mapping, which is really just tell me about the lifestyle that you envision for your life. Actually, one of the things, it said your dream destination is the Cotswolds or Portugal. From a personal level, when we try to get to know people, we ask them personal questions because it helps sort of fill in who they are. It helps them for us to connect. I know that, for instance, you like Earl Grey tea. I'm sure there's a story.
Which I had in the Cotswolds, and now every time I have it, it reminds me of that, and I love it.
Yeah. And so but the reason I bring it up so specifically is I think sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your job with your clients is to tease out of them things they already know, but they're just not aware of it.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's reframing. Maybe it's because there are already so many talented people. It's just really, how do you sort of, again, I like your concept, but it's just a little subtle shift.
Yeah. And I think also giving people permission. I think a lot of people know what they want in their gut, but they're scared to say it out loud. And more than that, they're scared to claim it. They're scared to feel. And I think, you were kind of describing that oftentimes builders can be men and designers can be women. And I think that that's a big part of a lot of what I'm doing too. I think there are a lot of I don't exclusively work with women, but a lot of the ones that I do work with, I feel like a lot of people are people pleasers. A lot of people are perfectionists. I think this industry, like interior design, really draws in people who can walk into a space and see how it can be better. And they're great at big picture and small picture. And they might have ADHD. And, it's some of these traits that I think, I know, guilty, but I think these traits can sometimes discourage people, or they can be made into feeling like weaknesses when I'm like, no. These are your strengths. And as the leader of your team, we want to polish these things about you while we set boundaries and create structure around them to protect you. And then we want to be hiring other people that can support, right? So none of those things are a bad thing. And I think sometimes people, they kind of think that they are, whereas I'm like, no. People pleasing, that's what makes all of your clients happy. But let's have boundaries around it. Let's create structure to protect you, or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on that. We talk about all the time at Contractor Coalition. I talk about our Curious Builder collectives, boundaries. In fact, I have a whole hour presentation about boundaries create freedom.
Yes.
And, if you don't, for
Agreed.
me personally, I have 3 young kids. It's really important that every day we have dinner together. So every day I pick up my kids at 5. We have dinner at 5:30.
Yep.
I don't work at night. That's a boundary for me.
Same.
Now, maybe someday that will change, but likely not. I'm a morning person. I honestly, any email I send after 4:30, I question the sanity of what I'm writing anyway.
I am not a morning person or a night person. I'm like, I want neither of those. I want to work right in the middle of the day. And
right in the middle.
It. But yeah, I feel like that's when my business completely changed. I think getting to see inside so many different entrepreneurs' businesses, which I think you kind of get the same, you start to see patterns in them and then you start to see them in yourself. And I think that it's a lot easier to go into someone else's business and say, oh, well, you just need to have boundaries. Oh, you just need to do this. You just need to do that. And then you go home with yourself and you're like, man, I really need to be doing a lot of this stuff. Again, everyone can say, charge more, know your worth, do these things. But it's really, really difficult emotional work to see those things and actually make the changes. But when I started truly having boundaries around my time, when I started really understanding what I had to offer, and I started putting myself first and the lifestyle I wanted, and then I fit my business to that, that's when everything opened up. I had to start charging more to make that work. I had to start delegating more to make it work. It forced me into a job now that like you couldn't pry me out of if you tried, you know.
That's amazing. I mean, like you said, we were talking before about this, just about the key parts of buy back your time. I mean, literally all the things you just said, the first thing, Dan talks about in the end is like, having an assistant, or like basically buying back your time just mean, and I used to have a toxic relationship with scale for so long. I thought scaling was, I wasn't afraid of delegating. That's never been my personal issue. It's the idea that like, what is the point of just getting bigger to get bigger? And so like, I mistakenly took the word scale and replaced it with the word big.
Yes.
And because I'm a scrappy entrepreneur who you name one entrepreneur who doesn't view themselves as David. They don't want to be Goliath. They want to be David. They want to be nimble and fleet of foot. And so, but like, that doesn't mean that scale, it just allows you to have a life and to do the things that empower you and stay in your supercharged lane. That's what I got out of the book, was like, what is your, well, let me ask you this question. What are let's call two things. We're doing this live. Yeah. What are the two things that what are your superpower? And let's talk about two things that you either need to delegate or have delegated because they drag you down for your business.
Okay. Well, I think my superpower, number one, problem solving. I think I'm a really great problem solver. And so I think that's what I like to spend most of my time doing. And I think secondly would be probably understanding with problem solving, it's like getting to the core of it. Like, I think that there is a difference between giving someone a solution that is like the Band-Aid for the bullet wound versus like digging past that to the actual problem. So I think I'm really good at those things and just like helping people feel seen and understood. I think that I have to tell people a lot of uncomfortable things. And I think being able to do that in a nuanced way with like kindness and respect. And, when I'm working with clients, I always like to help them understand with their brand what I call the emotional or the intangible deliverable, right? Like I always tell people don't go through a renovation because they like dust, right? They're doing it for an emotional reason. They don't just want to deal with the inconvenience. So how do we understand like what is the emotional deliverable that we're giving our clients? And every one of my clients, it's something different. Sometimes it's peace of mind. Sometimes it's confidence in the decisions. Sometimes it's fun. We're popping champagne and it's a fun experience. For me, I want all of my clients to leave working with me feeling excited, because I think that, I was going to say this, but like, I think that while time is our greatest asset, in this industry, our greatest asset truly is creativity, and creativity comes with spending time. But I think that like when people are inspired and energized, they have more creativity and they have more inspiration. And that is really the product. So when I can help get people more energized and excited, I can then help them create more inspiration, which then is going to help them make more product that then we can sell.
I mean, it's funny because I think, if you look, I don't know all the designer things, there's high point and low point and mid point and all these different points.
Round top,
round top, low top. I mean, they're going to Europe and like, but there's something about travel, and I should just speak for myself, but I think this is true. Yes. Most people like travel. You see new cultures, you see new things, you get challenged. You're like, ooh, I want to bring that back. And it makes your home, it makes your design, it makes your business. It's more diverse, it's more colorful, it's more interesting. And also just creativity. Like you don't know what you don't know. And I think people inspire us, stories inspire us, places inspire us. But actually, it's like, but it's hard if someone was to tell you like, you need to go get inspired right now, like good luck. That's not like it's not like a training run. Like I can schedule a 5-mile run. I can't schedule 5 minutes of inspiration. Totally. Like that doesn't really work.
Well, like going back to your question before too, where it's like, what have I really delegated so that it allows me more time for problem solving? Because I think that kind of ties in with what you're just saying. But I think a lot of it is like the things that need to be done consistently. I'm not good at any of that stuff. I am great at, again, like I'm great at project managing. I'm great at solving problems. I'm great at like vision. I'm good at like lots of things. I'm confident in that, but like making sure that like the payroll gets paid every time on the right. No, I don't even know when that happens. I'm not going to be good at that. So I think like things that like really happen consistently, kind of like if I have to go to the bank and like wait for the bank person to do all this stuff, I'm like, my brain is melting and I can't handle it. But like, I feel like when I started being like, okay, I'm delegating a lot of this really consistent time. I'm spending most of my time on the problem solving. And then I'm really focused on creating those buffers so that I have the time and space to just kind of not know what I'm going to do, whether it's planning travel and being like, hey, I'm blocking off these days, or, I'm really big into time blocking my calendar. I feel like that is something I feel like has changed my life. But being able to say, I am full up at 50 or 70% capacity. I am like, right now, I really only take meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then sometimes certain meetings on Wednesdays. Because of that, I almost always have Monday and Friday and most day Wednesdays free. But if someone is like, can you squeeze me in? I'm like, oh, no, I got no time. My Tuesdays and Thursdays are full. And like that has really allowed me to be able to have all that time and space to like, again, whether it's planning trips or going to the coffee shop or doing all that extra stuff that allows me to, be a better problem solver, be better at all the stuff that I feel like I'm really good at.
Time blocking is interesting. We could go down to work. We could do a whole podcast about time blocking,
Yeah.
honestly. Because I think, do you find this? Like, I'm always interested how other people time block, because you're like, ooh, is there something that they do that I can adopt into mine? And I've done it before.
Yeah.
I interviewed that. Honestly, this podcast has been super helpful for me as a person, as a business owner as well, because shout out to Jackson Sorch. He owns Hennepin Made, a custom light fixture company here in Minneapolis. I interviewed him, and he said that most people take time off around the holidays, but he also schedules 1 week off for his whole team over the 4th of July.
Oh, we do that too. Yeah.
And I was like, as soon as he told me that, I immediately went into my calendar, because if you know about it 6 months in advance,
but you just plan around it.
Not a big deal.
Totally.
It's easy. But if
you do the same thing.
And you tell people that don't, and they're like, oh my word, how do you guys take, it's like, well, it's actually, you guys can build a house, you can design anything, like you just plan around it. And guess what? You tell your clients, you tell your people, it's not a big deal. It's pretty easy. It's
all about creating expectations. And I think so time blocking, calendar, or I guess even process and operations. One of the things that I would say I'm quite passionate about is like finding the lowest common denominator. I like to make things easy. And I think a lot of times operations people can really overcomplicate. And a lot of my clients, I'm like, there's 5 people on our team. Like, we don't need to have the most sophisticated, complicated thing. We just need just enough structure to keep us like kind of straight and to allow the creativity, but not so much that it starts to stifle it. It's kind of like you're building a fire and you got to leave the breathing room, but like not too much, not too little. So with that, I'm like, I am not someone who's going to time block my calendar with like 1 hour for this, 1 hour for this, and put every single task. Instead, I always have a Monday morning meeting with my team. It's only allowed to be 30 minutes. If there's conversation that needs to happen deeper, then it's like, great, meet after and you guys do that, but we're going to go through all of our projects. Then I always do a creative review. I look over all the creative with my designer. She always knows exactly when she has access to me. We batch everything, go through it in 60 minutes. We're good. We do that on Mondays and Wednesdays. Then we do another team meeting every Thursday where we go through the status of every single project. Then my admin takes all of that and she writes a status update email for every single client on Fridays. So I don't have to do that because we can just download. And then I typically do all client meetings Tuesdays and Thursdays. So those are back to back, but I'm able to show up ready to go. I jump from meeting to meeting to meeting, and I don't plan on getting any work done outside of prepping for meetings, doing meetings, etc. And then if I do a new client kickoff, I'll often do those on Wednesdays. So I have the whole day to focus on prepping for that. And like, that's my structure. And now I have Monday afternoons are almost always free. Fridays are almost always free. Even if I put something there, it's that like, but then when my kid is sick and I have to go pick him up from school, I just move everything from Thursday to Friday and it's not that big of a deal. I used to have it where I was so full up that like, if one tiny thing went wrong, it would just cascade for weeks.
Have you gotten past, I'm pretty good at it, but I still have a guilt complex. And it's probably my people pleasing side where someone's like, can I meet you for a cup of coffee? Can I pick your brain? Now, honestly, we
Mhm.
have, we have like a one-to-one consulting for some of that stuff on purpose. If you met with every single person that wanted to talk to
Right.
you, like we have to get
Yeah.
paid. And like, or one of the ways I solve it is I just say, we do so many events, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like if people show up for you, you're much more willing to show up for them.
Totally.
And it's not meant to be a pay for play, but like you have to do some sort of
Yeah.
boundaries in your life. And
Agreed.
so anyway, I guess my root question to you is how do you balance like being a good human and helping people
Yeah.
when people helped you? Because I get that question a lot from myself and from
Yeah.
others. It's like, well, people don't know what they don't know, and it's like, it's not that you don't want to take the meeting, but you're like, man, when am I going to fit this in? And
Yeah.
it's like like when people send you an email, they've just transferred their to-do list to you. And I have a very toxic relationship with my email, and I struggle with it
You don't
mightily
love it?
because no, I love communication, and I
Yeah.
very much
I
value
love
it.
emails.
And well, no, I very much value communication. Like I
Mhm.
find it very disrespectful
Mhm.
if I email you and you don't email me back,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And
Yes.
and I'm not super offended by it, but my point is like
Yeah, you
I
prioritize.
will rule out a client, or I will rule out someone I work with because they don't respond in a
Yes.
timely manner. Now, timely means different things for different
Yes,
things,
but
so I
that's
can't.
just a value that you wanna
But
work with people that value that too. Yeah.
right, but then I feel like a hypocrite. Like if every single person that wants to like do
Yeah.
our painting or do our roofing, and like I have to respond to all of them, it's very
Mhm.
taxing. But yet I feel like I would be a hypocrite to ignore them. Do you struggle with
I
this?
think that's a great question. I think one phrase that I teach a lot of my clients and that I use a lot, I say yes, but. And I think that again, as a people pleaser, I think it's really hard to just say no or to ignore people or to just like, I don't like to be a dead end for people. I want to be a through line to something. I want to be helpful in some capacity. So I think that's where I always think yes, but. Yes, but I couldn't do it till June. Yes, but I think the best place for us to meet would be at this event. Yes, I'd be more than happy to do that, but here's how we do it. And I think the second part of that is once I started, again, I think for a very long time, I was, like many of us are, addicted to productivity. I think it's very uncomfortable to not be needed. And I liked being needed. I wanted everyone to ask me questions. I wanted everyone to need me. That gave me a lot of validation. I think I really had to work through a lot of that and being able to just let my clients go directly to my team and to be grateful and not feel like that means I didn't do a good job. But I think the more I started delegating, automating, getting a lot of these things off my plate, which I do believe that happens very small. It's kind of like dropping grains of sand like onto a thing where it's like you don't realize how it builds up over time. It feels silly at first, like I could just do it myself. But you have
I
to
know.
put the pennies in the bank account and you have to do it. And then over time you're like, wow, I have all this extra time. Once I started having extra time, I now can give back a lot more easily. Do I meet with every single person that emails me? No, but I will find some way to add value. And I also give myself grace that like maybe I don't respond immediately, but maybe it's within 3 days. And then what value can I add? And then yes, but yes, I would love to meet with you. I'm going to go to this event. This would be a great place for us to meet up. Or, yes, next time I'm in town. Or, just anything that I feel like I can offer. Uh, and then every now and then, you have the time and you're like, yeah, I actually have nothing going on Friday. Let's grab coffee. That sounds
Yeah,
fun.
I mean, yeah. I mean that's helpful to hear. I mean, part of it is just like it's like therapy,
Yeah.
trying to, realizing that you're not alone with that. And
No, yeah.
one of the questions that I was thinking about was, this goes back to that earlier comment I had about brand, how I had sort of outgrown my own brand. My wife said, hey, you need to upgrade.
Hmm.
But like when designers come to you and they're attracted to you because they want to scale,
Yeah.
how do you, their business is either outgrown where they're
Mhm.
at, or they're, a lot of times owners are the bottlenecks of their own company.
Right.
And again, it's pretty easy to see on the outside. It's sometimes
Mhm.
hard to see on the inside. How do you strategically go around that when they are their own bottleneck? Is it hard for them to let go? Or what are your, in the six
Yeah.
years you've done this,
Sometimes.
like when people are bottlenecks, what are some common either stories or examples that you might have where you kind of get somebody out of the bottleneck position?
Mm. I think I always start with like kind of assessing everything. I usually will have people fill out a pretty in-depth questionnaire. The reason I like that is because I feel like it lets me see inside the business. But I think people often fill out the questionnaire a little they kind of want me to see the best parts.
Yeah.
Right. And then I go online, I see their website, I like to look at Google reviews. I like to kind of see what would a prospective client see. Right. And then usually I'm kind of comparing those two things. And I find that like, the questionnaire says one thing and like the website and the external presence says another thing. Then when I meet with them, usually I'm going to get a third view. And when I can see all that, that's really how I get that like 3D picture. And so then from there, we can start to really assess like what actually needs to change. I think that when someone is a bottleneck, there are people that honestly are control freaks and they are a bottleneck. And the solution is just to have a smaller team and to do more themselves and to find ways to be more profitable. Like that is a legitimate solution. Other times it's let's really work through the mindset. Let's really practice. And I think it comes down to baby steps. I think that again, people feel like they need to make these huge changes or these huge jumps, and that's too scary. So I think a lot of what I want to do is break it down into something that feels like I'll ask people on calls all the time. I'm like, is this something you would actually do? Will you actually do this? Like, I know you're saying, okay, cool. Yeah, Renee, I'll do that. But like, are you actually going to do it? And I think I want to break it down to something that is small enough that they can feel confident that they could do it, right? Maybe they're not going to just let their lead designers take over everything right now, but maybe the lead designers can handle the back and forth communication with the project managers, and maybe they can handle all site visits after the initial kickoff or something where like, what can we break off?
So many builders, designers, their brand is themselves.
Yes.
And I think we're used to brands, right? I mean, let's go to like, Michael Jordan and Nike Air.
Nike.
Like we're very conditioned in our marketing world. That's why you have brand ambassadors, and it's, we like a spokesperson. We like a person. There's something about humans that human to human, right? And like it is, and I'm not saying you have to, but it is really interesting that I'm gravitate towards humans, but it's also probably what I also showcase. So if you have a designer who is very front and center on the camera, social media, on their website, but they are also the bottleneck, what is some strategic advice that you would give them? Because it's almost like if the client only ever sees them, but they might have a big team in the background, how do they ever get out of being the front and center all the time?
Okay, so what you put out into the world is what you get back, right? And we have control over what we put out. We don't really have control over exactly what people think, but we do have control over what we share with them and what we show them. So something I'll think about a lot is like, leadership. Good leadership is not you doing every single thing yourself, right? Good leadership is helping make sure that the right people are in the right place. And so I do think about it like a sports team a lot. Like if you have a baseball team, like we don't need 3 pitchers. We need the most talented person in each of those positions that is doing the best at those jobs. And then when you have that, you're trusting those people to do what they need to do in those roles. So I do think like, again, good leadership is not, I know how to do everything. You don't even have to know how to do the thing that they're doing. And I think sometimes people think as a boss that they should know more than everyone. And instead, honestly, you should be looking for someone that knows more than you about that thing and is aligned with your vision, right? That's how we know that they're going to want to stick with us and invest in us. If we can paint the picture, we can create the vision, and we create the standard of quality, that's what you're in charge of. So I think there's that part, right? Right people in the right roles, having a very clear vision that everyone's bought into. And as a leader, really understanding that your job is to help put the right people in the right place and to create the vision, share the vision, and make sure that everyone's aligned to the vision and like your values, how you work. Secondly, I think that what you show to people, people believe what you tell them. If you tell everyone, we're excellent at process, we're great at process, we have a killer process, they'll think, I bet they have a pretty good process. You do not have to have the best process on the planet to market your process and attract clients who care about process. So if you want to put more focus off of you and onto the team, that's why sometimes we name a studio name versus the owner's name. Sometimes that's why we would on the website make sure that there's pictures of the team. When you're starting the project, you're going to set the expectation and say, I'm so excited. Obviously, I'm talking to you today. When we're working together, you're going to be working with a lot of my team members. So you're going to expect to meet with this person, this person, this person there, and you're going to talk them up. They're incredible. This person knows so much more than me. I was so excited when I brought them onto my team because I feel like they've really added to the quality of work that we deliver, or, oh, the way that they know all the technicalities around such and such is mind blowing. And They trust you. And if you trust your person, then they'll trust your person. But I think that can, again, it's like, it can be a little bit of like an ego thing that we have to work through. But I think that like, if you want clients to trust your team, then you showcase your team and you showcase your trust in the team, and they will trust your team too.
I mean, yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it is interesting too. One thing I've actually never done before is interview our clients. I shouldn't say that never. We used to interview our clients at the end, kind of a post-mortem, and say like, hey, what worked, what didn't work. But it's hard to go back even for them to like go back. Like, how do you remember the first time you met someone if you've met with them for a couple of years, or like, I've been married for 13 years and dated for 16 years. I'm like, how am I going to go back to remember what life was like? It's hard to think of like what your frame of mind was, when you start going back.
Perception.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's hard to know. We can certainly take meaningful impact. I actually find more value in sitting down with our team when a project is done and say internally, okay, what went well?
What did we learn?
What did we learn, and what can we implement? And it's slowly, but it's a process that we try to do.
Totally.
Because you want to attract better clients too. I think a big part of it too is, what we're marketing. I feel like actually architects do the best of this that I've seen is, they do less is more. I mean, builders will post every single picture they've ever done of every single house they've ever done. Even rooms that should not be shot. They'll just,
totally.
I remember early in my career.
Curating.
Yeah. And designers are very good, but I think architects are even better. They'll do like 1 or 2 photos and then like a story. And you're like, I want to see the rest. And you're
show me.
And I used to get so frustrated, but of course now as I'm older and I worked with a lot of architects, it's obviously designed intentional. It's meant so that people, it's their currency. Yes. You have to reach out to them. They'd be happy to show it to you when you come into their office and meet with them. And so it makes, totally more sense.
I always tell people we want to like show it, tell it, and prove it. I think some people will say like, my work speaks for itself. And I'm like, it really doesn't. It says part of it. But when you really want to build enough trust, we want to show it. So we show our portfolio, we show what we can do. Then we want to tell it. We reinforce it with how we talk about it. And then we prove it. And that's where like testimonials, PR, showing your deliverables, right? Like, what can I do to prove that I am doing what I say I'm doing? And then also like with what you're saying about the architects, it's quality over quantity anytime, because as humans, we can't help but fill in the gaps. It's kind of like if I tell you, smart. Oh, she was like the most beautiful woman in the world. Like, you imagine the most beautiful woman. Everyone's going to do that. But if I show a picture, then now everyone can critique it. So it's like, you need to make sure if you're going to show it that it's actually what you say it is.
That's clever. I mean, you could have a killer outside or, vice versa. You could have a killer inside. Yes. Like we've done it before for privacy, where I had a client who didn't want the exterior of her home photographed because she didn't want people she thought people would be able to figure out where she was from or whatever. But honestly, I never told her this, but the outside was just not something I probably would have ever, so it was easy for me to agree to it. Her inside was killer. Yeah. But it's just kind of interesting. Less is more. Now, I'm sure when people go to that, they'll be like, oh, what does the outside look like? And in their mind, I never thought about it, that like they'll think like it's amazing.
And they're going to imagine the most amazing thing. And like, you can't go off of nothing. We have to have something. So I'm always like, I say a lot of analogies, but I always kind of think about it like I'm playing like poker, right? Like you're dealt this hand and I need to play this hand the best I can. And so a lot of times I'm like, oh, this card isn't working for me. I need to get rid of this. And what do I have control over? So I can get killer headshots of any designer and I can do that fast. I can't finish a project fast, but can I get one good like killer photo and a great headshot and write a killer bio, and you just have like a homepage with one beautiful shot, a bio with like a great headshot, and then like a contact page. That is going to be more impactful than a massive website with a bunch of filler work that just makes people go, okay, did they think this looks good? Because I don't think this looks good. They'll fill in the gaps.
If you're looking to level up your business in 2026 and beyond, the Contractor Coalition Summit is the place for you. If If you've been a listener to the show, you know that this has been the single biggest factor in how I've leveled up over the last couple of years. It's had a huge, profound impact on my business, my personal life. It's what helped me launch the Curious Builder, in fact. In Denver, May 1st through the 4th, will be Contractor Coalition, our #1 event. It will be for 4 days. On Friday, before we kick it off that evening, we're actually doing a construction instruction tour. If you know Mark La Liberté, he usually does a kickoff dinner each night with us at Contractor Coalitions for the last 4 years in terms of talking about building science. He's one of the foremost experts in the country. So his operation is actually based out of Colorado, which is really cool. You can also send your crews there, but in this case, there'll be the 30 builders, and we'll all go and check it out, see what it's all about. We'll also do a tour of Alderview Construction, and we will get a chance to see one of their beautiful homes in person before that evening, kicking off the 3-4 day event in Denver. We'd love to see you there. Our second event of the year is a little change. September 15th in Minneapolis, we are doing a 1-day event. So for the last 4 years, we've always done 3-day events, sometimes 4-day events. And we wanted to recognize that it's a significant investment in yourself, which is definitely worth every penny. I've talked many, many times about that. But for some people, it's just out of reach. So we wanted to do a 1-day crash course event. Obviously, we can't cover all that we can cover in a 4-day event, but this will be a major, major upgrade to whatever you are doing if you haven't been to one. So that'll be September 15th in Minneapolis. And then our last one of the season will be another 3-4 day event in Charlotte, North Carolina. All the details can be found at contractorcoalitionsummit.com. Last story on this part, and we'll move on, is my dad built back in the 70s and 80s, and he built a not nearly the level of homes, still a home, right? And he would spend a couple extra $100 on the front door handle. And I remember the story. He said, it's the first thing anyone touches on your home. I want what they touch to be memorable. And I was always like, that is a genius.
That is brilliant.
And that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so, we think, I've heard real estate agents say that, if they're going to list a property, a lot of people know appliance companies have done a very good job of marketing their brands. So the average consumer would know like Wolf Sub-Zero, Miele, that type of thing, but they're not going to know light fixture brands. They're not going to know, and even like I had Eric Tendler, one of the head marketing people for Cambria. He said one of the best things that they can do, because it's pretty inexpensive. Granted, he was also trying to sell Cambria, but like the point was, he's like, you can just, in a condo buildings, like you can just replace all the countertops, and people walk in, they might not look at the cabinetry, the tile, the plumbing fixtures, but they see
fresh and clean.
Yeah, and so there is some optics to that. And I think the reason I brought up it now is like you're filling in the gaps. Well, like if this door handle is this nice, how much nicer much be all the other things? Or if the countertop is this nice, and so it's like you're inferring things that you can't see, which is powerful.
Well, and I think that's what your brand does. I tell people a lot that like your website or your brand, because your website is kind of the culmination of your brand a lot of times. It's the car you drive up in, right? You can drive up in a beat up Camry and be a super successful person, but you're going to have to do a little bit more work to prove that. If you drive up in a really nice car, people are going to assume you're successful. Neither of them actually tell us the truth, but all of them that tells us the perception that we're creating. And you don't have to work quite so hard to prove yourself. When you drive up in that nice car, you look the part, you've got this, you're speaking the talk, you're doing the things, like people are just going to inherently trust.
It's so funny you say that, because I think I was exercising brand before I knew what it was.
Yeah.
I as a builder, and I tell my clients this all the time, like these calluses are from like lifting weights and playing tennis. They're not from working on your house. If you see me working on your house, call the PM, because I'm ruining something.
Yeah, like,
that's just not my skill set. My point in bringing it up is I had to looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck. Like if you're going to be a builder, you have a truck, or at least you had a truck probably in your career. Now, what am I using a truck for? I don't haul around stuff like to look the part, right? And so, now that I have 3 kids, it's more of like a SUV type of situation. But like I love driving. I would love to have a BMW, like the 5 Series or an M or a race car. I will never get one, because it does not even remotely fit the image that I would want to portray as a high-end builder.
Right.
That's my perception. I'm not saying you can't have it.
No, but it is too. I think cars, I'm always asking people like, what kind of car do you think your ideal client drives? And
Mm.
I want to know, like, do they have a French bulldog or a golden doodle? Are they like part of the yacht club, or are their
Yes.
kids in private school? Or, like these questions really do help us make decisions for our business, because you driving up in a race car could make people actually kind of get the ick. Like, be
Oh,
like,
for sure. It'd be a
get a
turnoff. 100%.
super nice truck. It's not about the money. It's about the values and how you're choosing to spend that money. And there are certain things that they're going to respect inherently. And these are not things said out loud. They're all snap judgments. But again, this is what we have the power to control. And like going back to like your business and like efficiency, when you attract aligned clients that genuinely just think what you think is beautiful, you're not going to have as many revisions. When someone just trusts your standard of quality, they're going to be like, they're not going to say $500 for a lampshade. They're going to be like, oh, this must be nice. Great. I love nice things.
Well, I agree. I love what you said. I think that's very true. I think it's a value alignment, right? Communication. I mean, you still have to have the skills and you have to do all these things, but people, and there's an enjoyment factor. I told someone the other day, I was in a remodel meeting yesterday. I told them they should tear their house down. So I went from a remodeler to, we're going to demo your house. But I said,
You're like, so all this gotta go.
but this is what I said. I said, you don't want to, I've always said this, you don't want to surround yourself with a bunch of yes men and women. You want people that will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It does me, and again, going back to the doctor analogies, it does me no good if you have stage 4 cancer and I tell you have stage 2. Like, well, how is that helpful?
Yeah, I need to
like
tell you the truth.
I need to tell you what is truth. And as the builder who's in charge of the budget, and I want you to like me during design. I want you to like me when I build it. I want you to like me 10 years when I'm still warranting this house. And like when I see you at the grocery store, I want to get your Christmas cards. Like that is my strategy. My strategy is I don't have to be friends with everyone, but I want to have a relationship that, and guess what? I would love it if I could take my kids and drive by a home that I built and knock on the door and be like, hey, Katie and Charlie, hey, could May and Simon come see the home that we built? And I would know without even having to ask them, although I probably would text them ahead of time, that they would say yes.
Yeah.
That is, and that's a story that really represents what I would hope to achieve. And I guess I only share that because I wasn't really thinking about where this question was going to go. But
I think that's great, because I think the kind of clients that you want to work with, when they hear that, whether it's on this podcast or you say it in a discovery call or those things, because they're true. They are true to who you are. They feel that authenticity and they're like, that's exactly the relationship I want with my builder. Somebody else is going to look at it and be like, yeah, but what's the cheapest that you can do? And it's like, you may go, sir, like, and that's okay, right? So that's where it's like, when we're so clear on who we are, what we want, what our values are, the more we can project that. And I think like a very small example of this, of like a misalignment, is like, I hear people talking to me a lot about like quality, like the way that you are, but quality and aesthetics and like all this kind of stuff. And then you'll go to their social media and they're like linking Amazon things.
Oh, affiliates.
And you're like, wait a second, how, and it's because they're looking at their Instagram engagement. And I'm like, your mass audience on Instagram is not your ideal client. You have to serve your ideal client everywhere, because otherwise there's that misalignment. And then you lose trust from your audience that's following you, that you're sending Amazon stuff to, is like, you're wearing Gucci shoes. And then your ideal client who's also wearing Gucci shoes is like, why would I buy this piece of crap from Amazon? You have to stay sharp and focused. Otherwise you lose the trust.
It's authentic. It's, we did a personality test 4 years ago with our team, and it was really interesting. News alert, I was the same person at home as I was at work. Like I'm the same, right? We had a person on our team who at home, how she showed up was completely different than what she was being asked to show up for in her job. And she didn't make it a year and now we know why, because you can't change who you are. Like you could, I like what you said earlier. Right. And you shouldn't have to. And part of that would have been on me. We had her, in all fairness, we had her in the wrong role. It's kind of like, is it the right person in the wrong seat? Or, well, all the different ways you can spin that around. But like, that was really eye-opening for me, because if you are going back to the superpower thing, like if you are staying in the creative lane where you're getting energy and excitement, you can do it all day long. The fuel source is infinite. And we all have to do things that we, of course, drain our energy to some level.
Absolutely.
But it shouldn't be the majority of our stuff, because if it is, we're not going to make it. We're going to burn out.
Totally. I think one of the questions you had kind of like sent me right before this was something about how do we know what to delegate? How do we help clients or my clients know like what to delegate? And I'll often have people do this matrix where you like take a piece of paper and break it into 4 quadrants. And in the first quadrant, like the top one, you're going to put things you like doing that give you energy. And then next are going to be things you don't like doing, but give you energy. And then the things you like doing, but drain your energy. And the things you like doing are the things you don't like doing and drain your energy. And I think sometimes I will notice that people start to delegate the stuff they don't like, but they're not keeping enough stuff that gives them energy. And so you need to make sure it's not just delegating all the things you don't like doing. You actually want to delegate the stuff that drains your energy and then keep the stuff that gives you energy, even if it's a mixture of things you like and don't like. There's a lot of stuff we kind of hate doing, but it's really good for us. Or when we get done with it, we feel we feel productive, we feel fulfilled. We want to maintain that over just like things we like. And I think sometimes people conflate those.
I think that's well said. Yeah. I had a question for you here before we kind of take this plane in for the landing is you're a strategist. What, in your words, what would be the difference between being a strategist and a coach?
I think that the way I approach strategy is very much getting down to the core. I think it's just a lot more problem solving versus hand-holding. I think coaches oftentimes do longer engagements too. Like you'll often work with a coach for a minimum of a year or longer. And I think that coaches are maybe a little bit more the intersection of like mindset and just like you were saying before, carving out the time and the accountability. Well, I think that's a big piece of it. I think that I put more focus with my clients on the actual problem solving and the insights. And I think while there is some accountability, I think that oftentimes coaches can kind of take a little bit more of a passive role. And I think that I like to take a little bit more of a get into it role. I want to stay as action item oriented as possible. And then I don't know, I think that it's a little bit, they're kind of the same, but I think that the biggest difference is going to be mapping out like exactly how we're going to do this and staying really focused on solving the problem versus just like, I think sometimes coaches can focus a little bit more on like how everything feels. And I'm like, if we can actually solve this problem, you're going to feel a lot better. So
yeah,
I think that they're very similar.
Yeah, no, they are similar. It's always, I like to ask versions of that question to just hear how people, because I mean, it's really just how you perceive it, right?
Yeah, totally.
You could easily make an argument that they're same. One last question is, you talked about it a little before, and I'm curious in your perspective. I'm 45. I feel like I know myself the best I've ever known myself in really the last 4 or 5 years. And I don't know if that's coming of age, is that maturity, is that time, is that burnout, is that new creation? I don't know. I guess my question is we usually associate like age and wisdom, having, kind of understood that. Have you ever met a younger client that had a super clear idea of what they wanted and where they were going? Or does it usually have to go through the messy middle and we don't really come into that until we're more experienced or more seasoned?
Oh, this is a really good question. I think that my answer, which is kind of vague, is like yes, because I think that if someone is a bit more self-aware and kind of has that deeper wisdom at a younger age, it only grows deeper and more nuanced as they also get older. So I think that like with age and experience will always come wisdom if you are open to learning and growing. I do think maybe the flip side of that is I do sometimes see people who are older, who haven't necessarily reflected, who haven't necessarily taken the time. They kind of feel like everybody else is the problem and they're not really looking for like how they might be the problem. So I think I'm more likely to see someone who is older, but maybe still has that immaturity. And I mean, not that I wouldn't see someone younger that has the maturity. I just think that like, if you are open to feedback, if you are looking for ways that you can improve, and I think the older I get, the more I realize it's this duality. I need to give myself grace for not being perfect while I'm striving to be my best. And that I think is like, to me, that's where happiness is found, is that like, I can look at my house and see how I want it to be better, but also like enjoy it day to day. With my kids, I can be excited about them growing up and excited about the next phase while also like enjoying the phase I'm in. So I think that like really being able to handle that duality is really important. But I honestly think that being an entrepreneur is like the refiner's fire. I think it's impossible to be an entrepreneur and not have to face like the things about yourself that are challenging or uncomfortable. I think that it is inherently a refining journey in the same way that parenthood is. And I tell people this a lot. I think becoming a parent really changed who I am. And I would argue that being an entrepreneur has been just as impactful, just in different ways. Yeah, I don't know. I think that like it's kind of essential in this process to like you have to deal with critique, you have to deal with feedback, you have to learn and evolve, you have to challenge your ego, you have to like even just like the money mindset stuff. Like you got to work through like as you get more successful and like how do I tie my worth to money and how do I feel comfortable with this? And it's not always just because I'm charging more doesn't mean I need to do more. And how do I grapple with that? And I don't know. I think that those are a lot of the pieces that as a strategist we deal with as well.
I think that was. I'm gonna go back and listen to that one again. I think that's good. I heard something really funny the other day, and it was in a negative context, but they said the response what I'm about to share in a positive way, and I'm like, I've got to remember this one. It was when someone says something that you're not really jiving with, you're like, your feedback is a gift. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your perspective.
And I was like, I'm not nearly brave enough to say that to my wife if we're getting into a marital dispute. It's living rent free up here.
There's gonna be a moment. There's gonna be a moment where you have the chance to say that and it's going to be the highlight of your life.
I might just go for it. You know what?
I think there'll be a day. No, that's awesome. I do. I think that like just all of these things, I mean, that's why you have this podcast. Like these are not easy things. Right. I think being an entrepreneur, it's not the hardest parts are not what you expect. Again, just like being a parent or just like getting married, everyone tells you how hard it is. You cannot understand it until you're doing it. And at the same time, the benefits and the reward is so worth it. And I think the way that it helps us to become better human beings, I just think that it's such a blessing to be able to have these challenges and to be able to work through them as a person and the way I collaborate and connect and be a leader and all that stuff. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
That's amazing. Well, we'll end the podcast with two things that I meant to do with in the very beginning, which is we let every guest before ask a question of the guest I'm interviewing. And you, when you're done, you get to leave a question for Stephanie, who will be on, well, cool. As it turns out, an hour later. Okay, so this question, I can't remember off the hand. Laura Brophy left this one. It's, what is the hardest thing that you do in your job?
The hardest thing I do in my job, I would say charging people money. I mean, that's kind of what I was just saying, but I think that is, I would not describe myself as a very money motivated person, but at the same time, I'm a single mom. And so like, I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be able to provide for my kids. I have like a lot of those things. And I think that, the more that I have created systems and structure around my prices and backed it up with data, that has really helped me. And then also just like doing the mindset work of really understanding the value that I'm bringing to other people and that when there is demand, it makes sense that the price goes up and that this is what the price is. And honestly, the people that happily pay it are always the ones that are my favorite clients. And,
that is so funny you said that. So I've often said that the clients that you do the best on financially are your best clients.
The
happiest it's like, I've never asked that question and that not been true. Yeah. And I can't tell if it's like, is it subliminally? Are we just have a little pep to our step? Or are we just a little happier? So. Like what is it? Why is that?
I honestly think it's a signal that you're aligned. When they look at you and say, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Because you know how it is when you're shopping for something, like even if it's a new sweater, because you need that new one because your old one's in the closet. And you're like, I know I want it to be natural fibers and I know I want this, but 500's too much and this one's not right. When you find it, you're like, done, sold.
You know what? I'm going to have to ask that question again. I think you answered it for me. Alignment. I've never been able to succinctly understand why. It's true. I've asked this question, and not just in our industry, virtually almost every industry, but I think you're right. It's alignment. They feel like they got a good value. You did well. And sometimes, I mean, I've had it before. We're like, especially early on in my career, before I understood that profit's not a dirty word. Like I remember one time on this client's house, like we made like 4 or 5% more than I thought. And I thought I was robbing them.
feel bad.
I felt terrible.
Mhm.
And they were so happy. And I was like, I didn't have the heart to tell the little puppy that I had, had fleeced him. And but then now in hindsight, I'm like, actually, no,
But
we
it's
did an
never about the
outstanding
money.
job. No,
Yeah.
right. But it was up here, and it's like not feeling guilty. And that was just something I needed to evolve. You know what actually be interesting is like, would I have the courage now, it's been 10, 15 years, to like sit down with them for coffee and be like, and I loved it.
Most profitable project ever. Thank you so much.
Well, percentage wise it was. And it'd be interesting to ask, actually, that's not true anymore. You know what's funny?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway.
Just because we evolve, you know?
Yeah. Okay. You and I could talk forever because I got 1,000 more questions. No. Trust me, it's my fault. What is your question for the next guest?
Okay. What's something that you used to believe was essential to your success that you've now realized is no longer, like it's no longer essential?
Wow, that was a pretty good one. All right. Well, you heard it here. We'll have everything in the show notes. It was delightful to meet you. I'm so glad Melissa put us in contact. And if you're ever in Minnesota, or if you come to tour Mesa Hoos in June, you'll see Melissa and I both there. So
that sounds great. I love that idea.
All right. Minnesota's beautiful in June. Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor. Share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.